The Aldren variations had been lost for 270 years, and Elena Marsh had been chosen to find them. This was the part of her job she loved most, not the recovery itself, which was technically straightforward, but the moment just before. The reading of the historical accounts, the assembling of context, the reconstruction from diary entries and letters and second-hand descriptions of something that no longer existed anywhere in the physical world, except in the memories of people long dead. It was, she had always thought, the closest a living person could come to touching a ghost. The accounts were consistent and remarkable. 4 separate diary entries written by 4 separate attendees of a private salon in Vienna on the 14th of October, 1887, all described the same experience in language that was, for Victorian diarists, unusually unguarded. One wrote that the music had made her feel she was remembering something she had never experienced. Another wrote simply, "I cannot account for it." A third, a music critic of some reputation, not given to sentiment, had written 3 pages of careful technical analysis and then abandoned it mid-sentence, noting in the margin, "This approach is inadequate." The composer, Josef Aldren, had died 3 weeks after the salon. He had never written the piece down. He had never performed it again. He had left no manuscripts, no sketches, no recordings. He had left only the 4 diary accounts and his own journal, which Elena had read twice and found unexpectedly moving. The journal of a man who seemed perpetually surprised by his own music, as though it arrived from somewhere he couldn't locate. Her assignment was simple: attend the salon, record the performance, come home. The Temporal Preservation Archive's sensory capture units were small enough to wear as an earpiece and sophisticated enough to record everything within a 15-meter radius in full audio fidelity. Elena would sit in the salon, she would listen, and she would bring the Aldren variations back from wherever lost things went. She had done this 31 times. She had recovered a Shakespearean comedy that existed only in a single damaged folio. She had recorded the last public performance of the pianist who died the following morning. She had sat in the back row of a theater in 1920s Harlem and wept quietly at a musical that had never been written down and never been staged again. The work was unglamorous and essential, and she was very good at it. She arrived in Vienna on the afternoon of October 14th, 1887, dressed appropriately, carrying a letter of introduction that the TPA's historical integration team had prepared. She attended the salon as a visiting music scholar from abroad. She sat in the 3rd row of a drawing room that smelled of beeswax and wood smoke, and she waited. Aldren was a small man with an air of permanent mild distraction. He sat at the piano and looked at his hands for a moment before he began, and then he played. Elena recorded everything. She also, despite 31 recoveries and the professional detachment she had carefully cultivated over a decade, forgot to take notes for the first several minutes. She sat in the 3rd row of a Vienna drawing room in 1887 and listened to music that had not been heard for 270 years, and thought, with a clarity that surprised her, "I know this." She returned to the TPA that evening and filed her equipment for processing. She requested a preliminary playback before the formal archiving procedure, which was irregular but not prohibited, and she sat alone in a listening room and played the recording from the beginning. The music filled the room. And Elena Marsh sat very still and understood that she had known this music all her life. Her grandmother had hummed it. That was the first memory. Her grandmother in a kitchen in Lyon, humming something without words while she cooked, a melody that Elena had absorbed in childhood the way children absorb everything, without attention, without effort, without any awareness that it was entering permanent storage. She had assumed it was something her grandmother had invented, a private melody, the kind of thing people carry without knowing where it came from. She spent 3 days tracing it. Her grandmother had learned it from her own mother, who had learned it from a woman she'd befriended on a train in 1923, a stranger who hummed it constantly and when asked said only that she'd heard it somewhere and couldn't get it out of her head. She traced that woman through passenger manifests, letters, and the particular persistence that the TPA's genealogical database made possible. She found her, a piano teacher in Budapest, born 1881, who had attended a salon in Vienna in 1887 as a young girl and had carried a piece of music in her head for the rest of her life without ever being able to fully reproduce it. She was in the 3rd row, 2 seats from Elena. The chain ran clearly forward from there, person to person, generation to generation, never written down, transmitted by ear and memory, and the particular stubbornness of a melody that refused to be forgotten. It arrived at Elena's grandmother in the 1970s and Elena herself in childhood, and stopped there, because Elena had no children and had taught the melody to no one. She was the last person alive who knew the Aldren variations. The archive had her recording. The music was preserved. That should have been the end of it. But Elena went back to Aldren's journal because she was thorough and because something about the phrase, as if placed there by someone else, had been sitting uneasily in her mind since she first read it. The entry was dated September 29, 1887, 2 weeks before the salon. A visitor this afternoon, a woman, foreign by her accent, who introduced herself as a music scholar and asked to speak with me. She said she had heard a piece of music in a dream. She described it as a recurring dream, very vivid, and wished to know if I recognized it. She sang it for me there in my study without accompaniment. I told her I did not recognize it. She thanked me and left. I have been unable to think of anything else since. It is as though she placed something inside my head and closed the door behind her. I find myself at the piano at all hours, following the melody she left, finding that it goes further than I expected, that it has rooms I did not anticipate, that it knows where it is going even when I do not. I cannot account for it. Elena read the entry 4 times. Then she pulled up the historical integration file for her Vienna assignment and found, in the standard background documentation, Aldren's physical description of the visitor. A woman of approximately 35, dark-haired, foreign accent, carrying a small leather case, wearing a coat of unusual cut. She went to her office window and stood there for a long time, looking at the city outside without seeing it. The music had no origin. It had never had one. It had entered Aldren's head on September 29, 1887, through the singing voice of a woman who had learned it from her grandmother, who had learned it from a chain of people that traced back directly to Aldren himself, who had received it from the same woman who was standing at this window right now, doing the arithmetic, understanding that the loop had been running for 270 years, and that she was both its beginning and its end. The archive had the recording. The music was preserved. But if she filed the case and closed the assignment, Aldren would never receive the visit. The melody would never enter his head. The salon would never happen. The chain would have nothing to carry. The recording she had brought home would be sourced from a performance that now had no cause. She booked a second deployment for the following morning, September 29th, 1887, Vienna. She spent the evening in her apartment, alone, humming. She found his address in the historical record and knocked on his door at 3 in the afternoon. He answered it himself, a small man with an air of mild distraction and eyes that were, she noticed, more alert than his manner suggested. She introduced herself as a music scholar. She told her she had heard a piece of music in a dream, a recurring dream, very vivid, and she wished to know if he recognized it. He said he didn't think he would, but she was welcome to try. She stood in his study and she sang. She had never thought of herself as a singer. She had the voice of someone who sang alone and knew it, unremarkable in range and technically unschooled. But the melody carried itself. It always had. It knew where it was going. She sang it all the way through, beginning to end, the full piece that Aldren would perform in a salon 2 weeks from now, to 4 witnesses who would spend the rest of their lives trying to describe it. When she finished, the study was quiet. Aldren was looking at her with an expression she recognized from his journal, a man finding a door in a wall he had assumed was solid. She thanked him and left. She walked back to the anchor point through afternoon streets that smelled of coal smoke and bread, listening to the city around her, thinking about the melody she had just handed to a man who would believe for the rest of his short life that it had come from somewhere he couldn't locate. He was not wrong. It had come from somewhere he couldn't locate. It had come from 270 years of ordinary people carrying something beautiful from one generation to the next, not knowing what it was or where it had started, only knowing they couldn't let it go. She supposed that was as good an origin as anything.